Welcome everyone to the very first episode of ABA in the MIA. My name is Karelix Alicea. I'm the co-host along with Mariam Nawabi, and we are both BCBAs who've been working together for 10 years now. Mm-hmm. We've been talking about getting together and making a podcast for a really long time, so we're really excited to be here. You want to introduce yourself to everyone?
So I'm Mariam Nawabi, and I'm a BCBA. And we've been in Miami. Well, I've been working in Miami for around 8 years. And it's a great experience to, work with Karelix. And we're here together to make a podcast and try to kind of bring everyone together and understand like ABA and make it more realistic for everybody and understandable and make it clear for everybody to, answer any of their questions and just kind of just be real, right? So a little background about myself. I think it's great to just kind of introduce ourselves and then kind of go over what our podcast is about and who's it about and what our main purpose is. And then hopefully talk about our future episodes coming along. And so I started out how I started my journey with ABA. It's basically when I was 19, I worked in a preschool setting, and I worked with, typical kids, early development, and I was very passionate about working with kids. I knew that was like my goal. It's to work with kids. And so my mom was in the field, and so I just got into it as well. But then I had a kid in my classroom, and he was a little different. He had like behaviors. He wasn't listening. He was basically like, I was like, oh, this is unique. This child is unique. He definitely needs one-to-one, help. And so the teacher who was in the classroom said, okay, we're going to have to tell the parents, making them aware of what's going on with their child. And so when we did that, they brought an ABA company to go and like observe him. There was a BCBA out there. So I didn't know exactly what she was doing. I was very interested in what she was doing. She was observing the kid, and she was kind of consulting me on like what to do, how to manage his behaviors, like if there's transitioning, like what should I do? So I got really into it, and I was like, wow, this is what I really want to do. And I got her information. And then from there, I started to research, like, how do I become a BCBA? Well, first I have to be an RBT, but during that time, there was no RBT like license or registration. Yeah. So there was just only training. And then after that, then you start working with the kid one-to-one. So I work with a company. It's called Love to Learn in Huntington Beach, California. I started out there, and they did early interventions and only working with kids who got diagnosed right away at age 2. And so we just work with speech therapists, OTs, PTs. And so we just kind of went and dived in and did VB map as our kind of assessment goal. Mm-hmm. And so we got our goals from there. And I just kind of went through the VB map as an RBT, and I got supervised. And I was really passionate about it. And I learned a lot about NET, natural environmental teachings, and I was really into it. And once I got into that, I was like, wow, I can actually be useful. Like, this is my calling, as a BCBA. So I became very passionate and started to see the progress, like a kid that couldn't talk, and now he's able to talk. So for me to see that and like have the parents just go through it and say, wow, my kid can talk because of you, like you made that huge difference. And for me, I was like, wow, I can do this for many other kids, and be a resource, like helpful for every other kid out there. So that's basically what I did. And then I took classes, and then I did my graduate program in Chicago School of Professional Psychology. And I really learned a lot with Dr. Schlinger. He really changed my life. Learning about ABA, he made it more useful and applicable, like through like real life scenarios. And I feel like I've learned a lot. It's not just through a PowerPoint and a lecture and you can just like learn about ABA. It's more of like, hey, here's the information. Let's apply it to the real world. And you're going to have to think about it. Like giving you rhetorical questions and he doesn't give you the answers. He just makes you think. And then the next session, what did you think about it? So for me, that was great. And then after that, I came to Miami and met my husband, and that's how I met you, Karelix.
Yeah.
So what was your story and your journey?
Thank you for sharing yours. Yeah, mine is a little bit similar. I was born in Puerto Rico. I came to the United States when I was 6 years old, so I've been here most of my life. I went through the public school system, and when I got to FIU, I took a class in behavior analysis and immediately fell in love. I feel like it's very common to hear in our field that you often just fall in love the first day of your first ABA class. And that's definitely what happened with me. It's just something so beautiful between the human psychology of it and the hard science of ABA that was just it just called to me. So I took that first class. I fell in love with ABA. I spoke to the professor after class. I was like, I need to work for you. I need to know what you're doing. And I started working with kiddos up in Weston, Florida, at an early intervention clinic as well. And I very quickly just found out how rewarding this career is. I was hooked. I mean, I do have a special passion for working with the little ones. The 2, 3, and 4-year-olds really tug at my heartstrings because that's such a period of rapid development. And it's so gratifying to come into contact with a child who, who's not talking, who's not playing with their toys, who's hand flapping almost 24 hours a day, right? And to provide that one-on-one attention that they need to get them going in the right direction. I mean, the parents are always so floored and so grateful for the services that we provide. And just spending time with kiddos and is just really, really gratifying for me. So I did that for a while. I branched out of the clinic and into the home environment for several years while I was in the process of completing my master's degree at FIU. I got both my bachelor's and my master's at FIU under the direction of the esteemed Dr. Jacob Goertz. May he rest in peace. And during that time, I really learned how to work one-on-one with parents really well because I worked as part of the Early Steps Part C program up in Broward County. So I used to live by FIU South, and I would commute to Weston to work in Broward. Wow. And I did that for, 4 or 5 years.
But there wasn't Miami traffic by then. Yeah. Not that bad, right?
Yeah, there was never any traffic. That's good. I was always kind of against traffic heading up to Broward. And there were a lot less opportunities in the field back then. I mean, if I remember correctly, there were like 2 ABA companies back then. Now, I'm talking like, this is 2000, right? The year 2000, which is when I started in the field. And so commuting was no big deal. It was so rewarding for me. But working under the Early Steps program, I really got a chance to experience what it's like at home.
Yeah.
What it's like for a parent to live with and to parent a special needs child. And that really just opened up my world, my professional world. It made me realize how many more tools I needed to provide services for families, because when a child has autism, the entire family needs support. Mom, dad, there are often siblings involved. I have experience, for example, treating a family in which 3 children were diagnosed. They were triplets, and all 3 had a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And so, and there were, it was mom, it was dad, each one had a nanny. So it was like, how do I navigate all those different learning styles? And I don't just mean the children, I also mean the families and the caregivers. Like it's so much to manage. I also found myself becoming a little bit of a social worker, because you always have to connect the family to so many different resources that are in the end going to just provide an overall treatment package. So it really it really helped me to build my professional repertoire so that I can better service and support these kiddos and their families. And then I finally got my master's degree, and I decided I took some time off for other ventures, and then I finally said, maybe 4 years later, I was like, you know what, I want to get back into ABA, but I want to start my own company. I want to start my own company because I just have a vision that I don't see, and I want to bring it to life. Yeah. So that's when I founded Lotus Behavioral Interventions. I worked on it on my own for many years until I finally got so many clients I couldn't keep up anymore, and then I started growing my business. And I met you shortly thereafter. I think you were the second person I hired.
Yes, I remember.
Yeleni was first, right?
Yes. And I know you had like a previous RBT, but she moved to north.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah.
Third time's a charm. You were my third interview, and we just clicked immediately, and we've been working together ever since.
Yeah. There's that huge chemistry we have. Like, we both have the same passion, and we both believe in quality ABA and not just McDonaldizing ABA for other reasons. So, and I feel like when I first did the interview, you interviewed me, and I was just like, because I was working for a big corporation. It was like PBS. I forgot the name of the company, but it was like 3 months. I wasn't happy with them. I was basically overworked, and they took me from one place to another, and it didn't even make sense. And I felt like there was no like training with the RBTs. Like most of the RBTs didn't know what they were doing. So it was like I couldn't even train them more because of the money, and they're like, nope, you can't, all these things. And there was no RBT like licensed or, from the BCBA. So when I did the interview, and you kind of like interviewed me, and I was just like, wow, she's really like passionate about everything, and you knew what you were talking about. And I was like, I really like that. Like, I really want to work with someone like that, and I can learn so much. And so I was like, you know what, this is a great opportunity for me, and I'm going to take this job. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That makes me so happy. I mean, again, we've been working together for so many years now, and just feel like we definitely have that connection, and when it works, it works. Everything was always so flawless between us. Your professionalism, everything. I always say I want to be like you when I grow up.
I actually really admire you, because you made a huge difference. Like, you were in a dancer, and then you did the entertainment stuff. Like, you're a speaker, like you're speaking engagements. You were teaching. You were, doing some training and seminars and the conferences. So I was really admired that. Like, I didn't even know about American Sign Language until I started with you. And I was like, what is this? Like, I've never done this. I've done PECs. I've done the AAC device. Yeah. I had like zero experience with ASL. And now, like, I got my experience, and I could see what it could really do to kids, like, learning throughout their whole lives. So it's a really good tool for them to start out first in the beginning when you're teaching a child how to communicate. So, yeah.
It really is. American Sign Language is like a little gift I have in my pocket for all of our nonverbal early learners, particularly because it really gets the language centers of the brain activated, much like spoken language does, right? American Sign Language is a language in and of itself. And so it's magical what it can do as far as neural development. And so, it's actually something that I dedicated my master's thesis to when I was working on that. And it's definitely something I would love to talk about more in one of our podcast episodes. I think it makes sense to maybe dive into a little bit of the topics that we're going to be touching upon during our podcast, because we have so many ideas. When we met over the phone, just a few days ago.
Yes.
And our brains were just like, we're going to talk about this and we're going to talk about that. And I want to bring this person on board as a guest and that other person. And our creative juices were definitely flowing. Maybe we can share a little bit more about the kinds of topics that we want to put out for our listeners and our audience.
Of course, yeah. Well, our first audience would be the RBTs. So I think definitely out in Miami, I think the RBTs are kind of lost. They don't know what to do. They don't know the red flags on what to see for a company. Also, the training. Are they getting the right guidance? Are they getting the right training? Are they being put out there and they're just expected to do whatever? So those are the things we're probably going to, go and talk about. Like, what do you see in a company? What should you see in a company? How many hours should you work? Are you going to be burnt out? Because a lot of RBTs come to me and say, I'm tired. I really am burnt out. And I feel like a lot of companies just kind of make them work more than 30 hours, 40 hours a week, and they're burnt. Yeah. And it's hard dealing with kids with autism and being on the go and then driving to home. So those are the other topics that we could talk about, and type of tools we can guide them to help them become better RBTs. Another audience is new BCBAs, upcoming BCBAs. Like, if I was a BCBA, right off the bat, I would like to know how to handle parents, because they don't train you when you go to school, when you do your training supervision. You don't get all that. Like, you have to find a work balance between parents and your intervention, making them happy. At the same time, you're doing ABA. And is it evidence-based, and is it based on our principles? So those are the things I feel like a mentorship of supporting them and saying, you got this, having the confidence. And then as business owners, like future business owners, or, you have a small company, and those private equity companies that are hard to compete with compensation, benefits. You're going to get these many clients, you got these hours because this company couldn't offer it to you, things like that. I think as a small business owner, we should be getting together and actually, outbeating these private equities, because I feel like there's no quality of ABA. It's just McDonaldized. It's meant for, this is how we're going to run this company, and whoever comes out, there's a turnout, we can easily replace them, and then keep continuing to go in this circle. So, yeah. What other topics did we talk about?
We also talked about parents. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where my heart is as well. I have a really big calling to guide parents through the journey of an autism diagnosis. It's something that I deal with, or that I handle, that I take on with a lot of pride, and I honor it. I honor that. That's the place that I have in this world, right? Is to help guide parents who may be feeling lost, who feel hopeless, whose dreams, have been shattered by the diagnosis, by the three little letters, ASD, right? Mm-hmm. It's the last thing sometimes a parent wants to hear.
Or they're in denial, like their kid's going to be better. It's just a diagnosis, or like they're not accepting it yet. There has to be some other, treatment. So
exactly, or they'll outgrow it. That's something you hear a lot. I know grandmas like to say that, oh, he's a boy, he'll outgrow it, you'll see, right? There are a lot of mixed feelings. Oftentimes, mom's approach can be very different from dad's approach, which can be very different from grandma's approach, which can all be very different from what the child actually needs, and like what developmentally makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so I have a passion for kind of bridging all of those elements together, and just providing hope, providing clarity, explaining to them, hey, your child is not talking now. Mm-hmm. But if you start them on early intensive behavioral intervention, as soon as possible, as soon as you have that diagnosis, get them going in the right direction, there is hope. The overwhelming majority of kids learn to talk, learn to communicate, learn to socialize. He might be able to, graduate from college. And we have lawyers that are on the spectrum. We have doctors that are on the spectrum, right? There is hope for your little one. And teach them to hope for that and to work toward it.
Yeah. And there's also those parents who received ABA and feel like, nope, I'm done with ABA. Like, I had the horrible experience. Like, we had a parent one time, had a supervisor come in there, and he would only see them once a month or something like that from what their experience was. And they didn't receive good ABA and they were traumatized by it. So parents understanding what to look for, and when they do hire these ABA companies for their kid, is this the right placement for them? And also I know there's like other resources out there, but they don't understand the words ABA terminology. It's confusing. So it's just something we can actually provide and make it more clear for them and provide real life experience and make it more easy for them to understand and help them, guide them once they get the diagnosis. What should they do? Because I feel like they don't have that much resources. They just say, here, this is the ABA company. You need ABA. You need OT. You need speech. You need this. And they're just like, where do I go? What do I do? And so I feel like this could be a good podcast for them to listen, and we can discuss those type of topics and what steps to do. Take it easy. Let's do this. Step 1, step 2. And kind of break it down for them. So, yeah.
I love that. I really think we have so much valuable information to share with everyone. And not just necessarily from the two of us, but again, we really plan on having amazing guests on the show, both local and interdisciplinary. I'm very big on working side by side with educators, with speech language pathologists, with occupational therapists, with licensed clinical psychologists, with neurologists.
Yes.
I'd love to have a neurologist talk to us about autism and what it looks like from their perspective. If diagnostic assessments is something that we can deep dive into on an episode, and just bring so much valuable information, and not just on a superficial level, right? But I really love deep conversation. I love emotional topics. I love difficult topics. It's, some people shy away from them. That's something that I'm like, that's what I live for. That's what makes my heart beat. That's what gives me goosebumps. And there's nothing superficial about the work that we do. Yeah. You can't work with a child to provide medically necessary services that are going to ultimately determine their quality of life for them, for their immediate family, and for the community at large, and not take what you're doing very seriously. The unfortunate fact is that there is a lot of fraud in the ABA space, particularly down here in South Florida, particularly in the Medicaid world. And that is heartbreaking to me. It's a disservice to the children that really need high quality services in order to thrive, in order to speak, in order to succeed in this life in the United States of America, where the primary language is English. I think that's something we can definitely talk about and bring guests on board to share all the ridiculous stories that we have heard throughout the years. I also think it would be wonderful to be able to share this space with other local professionals and to say, hey, why don't you share your story with us, right? We have an audience. Why don't you come on and be a guest on our show and share your story with us? Tell us about your failures. Tell us about your successes. Give us questions, right? We've talked about having maybe a podcast where everybody just, shares questions that they want us to answer, and we'll put it in a jar and we'll pick out the question and we'll answer, like a very a casual Q&A session that we can have kind of with ourselves and with the audience. So yeah, we're really, really excited. You know what I just realized?
Yeah.
I don't think we even told anybody what ABA stands for.
Oh, yes. You know what? That's a great conversation to have.
Because I'm thinking.
Yeah, this whole time we've been talking about ABA, but we didn't like actually explain it, right?
Assuming people know what ABA is, granted, the overwhelming majority of our audience is probably going to know, but maybe for a new parent or maybe someone who happens to stumble upon this content, this is probably something we should go back and edit and add a little blurb in the beginning. But do you want to give a brief explanation of what it stands for, what it is?
So it's Applied Behavior Analysis. That's the ABA, AKA. And so what we technically do with ABA is that we look at environmental variables that are, that happen before a behavior happens and after a behavior happens. And once we've figured out the environmental variables, then we're able to manipulate the environmental variables and try to provide interventions to decrease the behavior, or if we're trying to increase the behavior. So that's my way of saying it, layman form or whatever, but you can. Yeah, no, that's definitely right. I mean, what we basically it's ABA is the number one evidence-based treatment for autism, right? And we also do very well in other spaces, but it's definitely where we've decided to dedicate our careers. We are lucky enough that, all 50 states now have autism mandates so that, commercial insurance companies and Medicaid, they all, the overwhelming majority of them anyway, right? You have to be like a large employer or whatever, but they all have this mandate to cover ABA therapy given an autism diagnosis. So I guess that's one way to look at it, and another way, another important point I think it to make is that we basically work on improving behavior,
adaptive behavior, and decreasing maladaptive behavior, or and teaching replacement skills to improve the overall quality of life. And we do it in a very gentle and loving, assent-based way, right? ABA has a bad rep from many, many decades ago when, it first started. It's evolved. There are still, I guess, a lot of companies that are doing things in a way that is, I guess, not as evolved, or
it's more robotic. A lot of more DTT, which is discrete trial. It's basically if your kid goes at the table and they're working on, let's just say a target. What is your name? They'll say like, Abby. What's your name? Abby, and they just go back and forth, like providing trials. It just sounds too robotic.
And flashcards, like flashcard work at the table, right?
Yeah, it's not natural. But I think you should have both, depending on the client and what they need. It's a good balance, but it all depends on your child and what your child needs. So I think you can't just say, hey, this is what works and this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to do it with every kid. So every kid is significant in many ways. And also, I think ABA should evolve with kids, like with us in the career. I feel like a lot of BCBAs turn away working with speech therapists. OTs are like, nope, let them do their thing. I'm going to do my thing. I don't want them to step in my lane. And speech therapists, we're like, okay, well, we're not going to work on what you guys are going to work on. But their goals are completely different than our goals. But what's the point? Like, we should all come together. And, I feel like we reinforce, incorrect behavior sometimes, because from a speech perspective, you're supposed to do, a good articulation and, not add in sounds when they're, manding and things like that. And I feel like we, accidentally reinforce that because we're like, oh, he's making a sound. Let's do it. Let's keep rewarding that. But once it gets to the level of we need really good articulation, but we're not providing that, and the speech is doing something else. So I think collaborating with, everyone, kind of what you mentioned, we're all a team, and we're going to provide a good service for this kid. And I feel like that's what we should do as a community. And I haven't seen much, because I've worked with a kid with speech and OT, and we've seen so much progress within a year.
Yeah.
From a year, it would be someone working with a kid for 5 years or something like that. So seeing the progress, you could see it faster.
yeah, the improvements you see can definitely be exponential, right? And they feed into each other when you work collaboratively with a team. So, yeah, that's definitely another topic we can talk about, and we can bring, those specialists on the show with us. Again, so many possibilities. We thank you guys so much for sticking around until the end of our very first episode. We're so excited to continue. And just be sure to tune back in for episode 2.
Yep.